Hello, and welcome to Best WP7 Games. Today we're taking a look at Doodle God. Now, I'm just going to skip this loading screen, and also going to skip past the part where I delete my saves, because I don't want to spoil the game for you. And as creating new elements is a large part of the game. I'll skip. Oh, I'll also let you watch the intro.
God created the four basic elements. From earth, God created the planets. From water, seas and oceans were created. From fire were created volcanoes and other stuff. From air, well, air. But the world was still vast and deserted. And then Doodle God was struck with a bright idea. Thus he saith, what if I combine the basic elements to create new ones? And Doodle God began creating new elements. There is so much to combine, so much to create. So saideth Doodle God.
So yes, that was the introduction that plays when you first start the game. As you go along, there's a few other little bits where it'll stop you to give you a new little cutscene like that. And they're all quite pleasantly done. And they're obviously not being voiced by a professional voice actor, but it's entertaining, and they're actually quite it's well self-explanatory. So as you can see, I'm doing exactly as the instructions said I would, as I am the Doodle God. Whoever plays is playing the Doodle God. So I'm combining the different elements I'm presented with. Each time you combine an element successfully, not all elements can combine, as we'll see, you get a new element, which can then sometimes be combined with other things. You can also combine elements together with themselves occasionally, but most of the time that doesn't work, as you saw. So anyway, the game is quite interesting in that the logic used for combining elements, sometimes it's actually sort of based on vague scientific principles, and sometimes it's based on punning or other sort of slightly silly concepts. So you have to always try and tune into whatever the developer's mindset was on the day that they were thinking up these different combinations. Also, there's also the downside that sometimes you can think of combinations that should work that won't because the developer hasn't thought of them, or there's other times you might just not be able to think of anything. Fortunately, the game does include a little hint system for when these situations occur. So you can see this, it gives you a clue as to an element you're missing out on, and then tasks you with working out what it could be. So it suggested ash, which to me seems like a combination of fire and dust. And indeed, it is. So that's a nice little feature. It means if you do get stuck, there's always a way forward. Though then you'll notice there's a little timer that's kind of counting down. You do have to wait between it, so you can't hint your way all the way through. Anyway, that's not all there is in this game, otherwise it would just be the same as the Flash version. There's also some little side quests. Now, these quests are basically the same game as the main game, but with a very specific aim. Rather than being given 4 elements to start with and gradually building up, you're given a very broad set of different elements to begin with the aim of creating specific categories of items. So in this case, we're trying to create virtues to counterbalance sins. I won't actually go through this, but just so you can see, you start with some very different elements here. Aside from the quests, there's also mini-games. Now, these are interesting in that, at first glance, they are just clones of generic puzzle games. So this is a standard, this would be, I guess, most closely related, you might think, to columns. Except rather than matching items, you're trying to combine them. So you're matching elements that would combine together. And as you saw there, they can actually stack multiple times. So if you combine 2 blocks into an element, which then combines into another, could combine with the element below it, it'll chain. So this is actually quite a nice little mode. One downside is that the presentation isn't great for it. I mean, they drop a bit too fast when you swipe, because they move in a tile-based movement. They jerk tile to tile rather than in a smooth sort of dropping manner. So it's only a slight thing, and this is only a mini game. It's not the core of the game. But yes, the presentation isn't brilliant on this part. However, as a game, it's still quite compelling, and it's got the added challenge that you've always got to try and remember what combinations you can make. So yeah, it's a welcome addition to the game. It's also worth noting you do not unlock the minigames. Well, I'll show you the other one in a second. You don't unlock them until within the main game, you've invented the element games, which makes a little bit of internal logical sense. As you can see, eventually you get far enough, you level up. And you won't invent games until, I think, Chapter 3 or Chapter 4 of the game, which is to say, well over 100 elements into the game. So it's not something you'll get straight away. You can also see here, this is the Bejeweled equivalent, albeit, again, with the element combining rather than element... well, it's not really... even though it's titled in a way which is bejoined, it's obviously riffing off of Bejeweled, the controls don't really work in the same way, as you're not swapping elements around, nor you try to match 3, of course, but you're actually pushing them into one another. Which surprises me. I got to say, I expected it to work like Bejeweled, where you'd switch elements around, and then they would combine with any nearby ones, which would have made sense. As it is, it's a bit simpler than that. You just have to spot any adjacent elements which can combine, and then again, if they combine into something which can then combine with a neighbouring element, it'll do so automatically. So yeah, both of these are quite simple, but they're welcome additions. And on top of the main mode, which is very long, longer than it looked at the beginning, you may have noticed it said there were 135 elements to unlock. That's true, that's how many there are to unlock in the first chapter. The later chapters add new elements to work with, and they also take away certain types of element. There's a lot of variety in the game. There's a lot of content in the game. It's an Xbox Live title, so of course it has achievements. And generally speaking, I think it's well worth the money. There are a few differences between this and the other smartphone versions, which I've detailed in the written review, which are a little odd. But other than that, it's a great fun little game, available on the marketplace now.